Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So here we are in the desert. We today began reading Sefer Bamidbar, the book of the events in the desert. And there is something special about this Midbar, this desert in which the Jews will wander for 40 years. Our rabbis taught that the Torah was given through three things: Ba'esh, B'mayim, Uvamidbar, Torah nitna. Through fire, through water, and through Midbar, the desert. And these are not merely elements. They refer to events which bound us to our history. Fire represents the fiery furnace, the faith of Abraham. The Midrash depicts Abraham as being cast into the furnace for denying the idolatry of his day, and yet he survived. And it is not just Midrash, but a historical fact that many great Jews have had their faith tested literally through fire. Water symbolizes the faith of the masses who crossed through the sea. The Torah told us, Vayavo kol b'nei Yisrael b'toch hayam, that together, however fearfully, the Jews went into the water and across the sea. And without that action, we would not have survived as a group. Eish and Mayim, fire and water, both represent bursts of faith on particular occasions. One, perhaps, the devotion of an individual, and the other, a collective faith. But the question that remains is whether that faith will survive through the long haul. It's true there are critical moments when we have to choose the right path. You may make a key decision in a day, but will it last? Can one live up to a deep commitment consistently, year in and year out? And therefore, the third element, along with the fire and the water, is the desert, representing the long years of the Israelites' maturing faith in the wilderness. The wandering for over 40 years showed that despite difficulties and crises and occasional lapses, the people persisted and went on to the Holy Land. And it's true for many of us, too. Our youngsters do a lot to prepare for bar mitzvah, as you did, Rachel. That's very important. But what matters most comes later. Depends on how things will work out over 40 years, if there will be a long-term commitment after the initial period of study and preparation. Maybe it's only 40 years after B'nai Mitzvah that we can say for sure that our students have developed mature Jewish commitments. Now, I probably won't be around in 40 years, but we have an excellent record of rabbinic longevity in this synagogue, and I expect Rabbi Strauss will be here in 40 years. So, Rachel, put it on your calendar for the year 2060 to check in with Rabbi Strauss. This teaching can apply to each of us. There are periods of fire, times of terrible pain or hardship, and in such times our faith may weaken. Those are the times when we need God the most, even if God doesn't answer all of our questions. And therefore, Judaism gives us a way of life that gives us strength and balance in times of fire. There is another rabbinic teaching that says that mayim, water, symbolizes blessing. Water represents good fortune, blessing, prosperity, and in this way we do have times of water. But we know that that can also be a test. Prosperity sometimes creates space for selfishness and arrogance. Prosperity can corrupt character. And for this also the Torah is given through water. We need the discipline and the influence of Torah, of Jewish life and Jewish wisdom. And sometimes our problem is midbar, desert. People often get lonely, bored, desolate, as in a desert which remains always the same. And there are few paths to follow in a desert. There's no direction, very few living things. And it's no accident that psychologists and clergy are busy dealing with people's deserts. Every one of us is likely to go through a desert period, a time when we feel deserted, without help, with only worries and anxieties and barrenness. And for this reason, the Midrash teaches that the Torah was given in the desert, because it may be that in those times when we feel most deserted, the Torah has something to say to us, and God can help us the most. Yesterday, we celebrated Yom Yerushalayim, the 53rd anniversary of the liberation of the old city of Jerusalem. Our people went through fire to reacquire the city, and we celebrated the great victory. The old city of Jerusalem is also symbolized by water because of the ancient wells which supported it and which were a lifeline for its inhabitants. I am old enough to remember how it was in the desert-like days before the Six-Day War, when Jews were not allowed into the old city of Jerusalem, when Jewish holy places were desecrated, when the only reason that the Arabs didn't annex the old city of Jerusalem was because they had not given up the idea of destroying Israel entirely. And unfortunately, some of them still have not. Too many people are quick to criticize the Jewish state and very slow to criticize those who have not given up hope of driving the Jews into the sea, as foolish as that sounds to us today. If the Torah was given through these three things, through fire, through water, and through desert, which kind of period are we going through in the time of the coronavirus? For some people, it's definitely a time of fire. For someone who is taken ill with the virus, and for their family, it's a time of fire. For those living from paycheck to paycheck who've lost their income because of the measures which had to be taken to preserve life, it's still a time of fire. And for these people, we pray that they survive and that their families not be plunged into mourning or further disaster. Some people are bringing the water. These are the nurses, the doctors, the respiratory therapists. The people who at great personal risk are doing what they can to control the fire all around them. It's a little funny that firemen are called firemen, right? They're really anti-firemen. They bring water to put out fires. And so do the people who are working to bring healing to countless others. And for these people, we pray that they be able to continue their work and be spared from the fire they are trying to put out. And for most of the rest of us, this time is something like a desert. We don't know how long we'll be here, and we don't have a map. Many of us are with family. Some of us are alone. For those of you who are with loved ones, be thankful for them and for your health, and be determined that you will camp together and get through this desert. And for those of you who are managing alone, know that your rabbis are here for you. In these days, God also is here for you. Remember that Moses received his call at a burning bush in a desert. But even Moses had to notice that the bush was not being consumed. And you too should notice all the ways that you can connect with your synagogue, and with Jewish life, even when much of life seems like a desert. Beginning this Thursday night, we celebrate the festival of Shavuot, commemorating the giving of the Torah. Our sages suggested that just as these three elements through which the Torah was given were free to all humanity, so also the words of Torah are free. The Torah belongs to all who want it. It is not a sign of favoritism, for no one ever has a monopoly on God's love. We are reminded that the Torah is given to us, but each day it's up to us to accept it. The Torah was given through fire, through water, and through the desert. May we remember that the values and the wisdom of the Torah are meant for all of us and for all seasons. Amen.